Bombing out Tokyo. It was March the 9th, 1945. The island nation of Japan, its judgment clouded by pride and ancient traditions, continued to defy the Allies and refused to surrender. Little did they know a storm of overwhelming proportions was inbound to the very heart of Japan. From the Mariana Islands, a dark armada took to the skies. Thundering engines roared as 300 B-29 Superfortress bombers climbed into the heavens, their bellies brimming with over 500,000 napalm and petroleum jelly canisters. The mission, codenamed Operation Meetinghouse, marked a significant shift away from the careful targeting of precision bombing. These came after months of surgical strikes by the United States 20th Air Force on military targets within Japan had yielded little. The decision was made to change tactics. Careful consideration would give way to sheer, overwhelming force, a strategy that had brought both Hamburg and Dresden to their knees. At the sunset, a stiff wind spread across the archipelago. Despite their stubbornness, the Japanese had actually little left in the way of defenses. Their air force was a shadow of its former self, and their anti-aircraft measures were not ready for the torrent of flames about to be unleashed. The night sky was covered by the spreading wings of the American bombers, and a storm of fire was unleashed upon the city. Entire neighborhoods were lit aflame. The sky turned black as night, and the snow began to fall. But this was no ordinary snow. They were the black ashes of war. Tokyo, with its many wooden and bamboo structures, was particularly vulnerable. Over 16 square miles of the heart of Tokyo were enveloped by the firestorm. The unnerving event, which would come to be known as the Night of the Black Snow, would make the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki pale in comparison to the destructive power unleashed that day. Even now, it is regarded as the single most destructive bombing raid in human history. In the wake of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the United States found itself grappling with the aftermath. The Pacific Fleet had suffered significant damage, and the nation's confidence was shaken. Across the country, there was a palpable desire for retaliation against the empire of the rising sun. However, Japan's strategic position in the Pacific, bolstered by its island bases and formidable navy, made direct retaliation challenging. Yet, American military strategies would press forward. A mere 132 days post-Pearl Harbor, they devised a bold plan unprecedented in approach. This mission was led by Lieutenant Colonel Doolittle. The plan involved 16 B-25 Mitchell bombers, modified for the task at land, launching from the aircraft carrier USS Hornet. The objective was to approach Japan covertly and strike key cities. On April 2, 1942, the USS Hornet set sail with these bombers. Despite their typical range of 1,300 miles, these bombers were equipped with auxiliary fuel tanks, extending their reach to over 2,000 miles. Their flight path was planned to avoid enemy radar. On April 18, 1942, they entered Japanese airspace, targeting cities like Tokyo, Yokohama, Kobe, and Nagoya before setting course of China. The AD airmen pressed on, fully aware of the mission's risks. Their journey deep into enemy territory was perilous, especially with the Japanese Air Force's capabilities. Their plan was to land in China post-mission, as a return to the USS Hornet was not feasible. The Doolittle raid had a psychological impact, while not causing extensive physical damage to Japan. It signaled to the world that the United States remained determined. The American public's morale surged. However, the raid had unintended consequences. The Japanese military, stung by this transgression against the homeland, intensified their efforts in the Pacific. This heightened aggression culminated in the Battle of Midway in June 1942. The Japanese thought to capture Midway Island, but their efforts were thwarted by American forces in a pivotal confrontation that shifted the war's momentum. In parallel, American engineers were developing an advanced bomber, the B-29 Superfortress. With a remarkable range of 5,592 miles, it was a significant upgrade from the B-25. However, To effectively target Japan, a closer base was essential. The American military embarked on a rigorous campaign across the Pacific, confronting fierce resistance on every step. Their objective was the Mariana Islands. Following intense combat, the islands were secured. On October 20th, 1944, the first B-29 touched down, with Tokyo now within striking distance. The strategic landscape had shifted. The B-29, representing a new phase in the Pacific conflict, was poised to play a pivotal role in the events that would unfold. As the sun set on the blood-soaked shores of the Pacific, the United States embarked on a relentless campaign to bring the Empire of Japan to its knees. The Pacific War was reaching its climax. From the strategic vantage points of the newly acquired islands of Saipan and Tinian, the mighty B-29 Superfortresses took flight. These aircraft, the largest operational bombers of World War II, were laden with bombs, and the pilots were filled with the determination to end the most devastating war in human history. General Hansel, a key figure in the development of strategic air power, led the 11th Bomber Command's aerial offensive starting in November 1944. Their mission was clear: cripple Japan's war-making capabilities. The first raid targeted the Musashina engine factory on the outskirts of Tokyo. However, the results were far from satisfactory. One after the other, the precision raids faltered before the powerful jet streams above the island nation. These winds, combined with the limited range of the ordnance, led to most of the strikes not hitting their intended targets or damaging the Japanese war machine. The skies over Japan proved challenging. The B-29s, despite their advanced technology, faced an impenetrable fortresses of cloud and wind. Time was of the essence. The United States leadership, including President Franklin Roosevelt, was growing impatient. The Empire of Japan, though battered, remained defiant. Their propaganda machine promised a fight to the last man. The cost of this defiance in American lives was mounting. General Arnold, the chief of the United States Army Air Forces, was incensed. The unsatisfactory results of the bombing campaign could not continue. General Hansel was relieved of his command, and Major General LeMay, known for his ruthlessness and innovative tactics, took the reins. LeMay was aware of the pressure. He had to deliver results. The precision strikes had failed, and a change of tactics was imminent. While the United States had always prioritized precision bombing, focusing on key industrial targets, the Allies had shown another way in Europe. Their area bombing over cities like Hamburg and Dresden had resulted in massive firestorms. Drawing from these lessons and the bombing trials conducted at the Dogway Proving Grounds in the United States, LeMay recognized the potential of incendiary bombs against the wood and paper structures in Japanese cities. In a climactic decision, LeMay shifted the strategy. The B-29s would not longer be precision instruments. They would become the harbingers of widespread destruction, aiming to force the Empire to the negotiation table. The area's strike race over Japan commenced. With them, the final chapter in the saga of the Pacific War was set into motion. Black snow was on the horizon. With the backdrop of a nation constrained by limited land, Japanese cities found themselves densely packed. The urban landscape was a complex mosaic of industry, leisure, and domesticity. In stark contrast to many Western cities where industrial zones were often segregated, Japanese cities saw their industrial facilities interwoven with residential neighborhoods. This unique urban tapestry, while presenting challenges for its inhabitants, also offered a strategic opportunity for American military planners. The concept emerged: if Tokyo's residential districts could be set ablaze, the intertwined military-industrial sectors would be caught in the conflagration. The projections were sobering. Incendiary assaults on Japan's 6 principal cities had the potential to devastate nearly 40% of the nation's industrial infrastructure. While the inevitable civilian casualties were a grave concern, it was rationalized that many of the civilians in the crosshairs would be workers from the adjacent industrial cities. Their loss would further weaken the Japanese war apparatus, ensuring that the casualties were not collateral damage without strategic value. The preparations began in earnest. Experiments were undertaken to optimize the incendiary payloads. The M69 incendiaries were identified as the most potent agents of destruction. Activity surged in the Mariana Islands, as vast quantities of these incendiary devices were stockpiled. The B-29 Superfortresses, formidable in their own right, underwent modifications to accommodate 4 tons of explosive content. Missions over Japan yielded varied outcomes. Some raids ignited widespread fires, while others proved less effective. On January the 3rd, Nagoya experienced a firebombing raid, but the city's efficient firefighting units managed to contain the blaze. This led to a sense of overconfidence among the Japanese leadership, who remained oblivious to the gathering storm. Major General LeMay, burdened with the immense responsibility of this campaign, scrutinized the initial raids. He deduced that the incendiaries had been released from excessive altitudes. A lower drop height would enhance accuracy and permit the B-29s to bear even greater payloads. However, the decision came with its own set of risks, as lower altitudes exposed the aircraft to heightened anti-aircraft threats. Yet, LeMay had a strategic advantage. Intelligence reports indicated that the Japanese possessed only 2 night fighter squadrons, deemed to be of minimal threat. With a calculated risk, LeMay instructed the removal of all defensive armaments from the B-29s. This weight reduction allowed for an even larger incendiary load. As the pivotal day loomed, murmurs of unease regarding civilian casualties reached LeMay. Unwavering in his decision, he believed that the Japanese would be unprepared for a low-altitude assault. He was aware of the moral implication of his choices, once remarking, "If we lose the war, we'll be tried as war criminals." Yet, defeat was not an option he entertained. Many within the ranks grappled with the ethical quandary of launching. The B-29s ascended, their hulls stuffed with instruments of destruction. A profound shift in warfare was in motion. The aftermath of that night would alter the course of history. As the evening of March the 8th, 1945 descended, a palpable tension enveloped the Pacific. General LeMay directed an operation that would target Tokyo's very core. The Shitamaki district, Tokyo's bustling hub of working-class activity, was in the crosshairs. The B-29 crews, aware of the gravity of their mission, prepared to strike on Tokyo's industrial heart. Their objective was clear: cripple the factories fueling Japanese war efforts. Yet, the strategy came with a heavy price. The anticipated civilian casualties would be vast, a grim testament to the complexities of modern warfare. Although LeMay, as a seasoned military strategist, desired to personally oversee this pivotal raid, he was privy to a classified weapon of power, the atomic bombs. The risk of capture and potential divulgence of this secret was too great. Thus, the responsibility was entrusted to General Thomas Power of the 314th Bombardment Wing. By 5 p.m. Mariana Islands time, the airbase buzzed with activity. The thunderous roar of 300 B-29 engines filled the air, signaling the onset of a significant operation. The logistical challenge of launching such a vast number of bombers was immense, requiring meticulous coordination. It took a full 3 hours to get all the aircraft airborne. As the B-29s entered Japanese airspace, initial misinterpretations deemed them a part of a routine drill. But as the true nature of their mission became evident, it was already too late. Shortly after midnight on March the 10th, the first incendiaries fell. Leading bombers marked an X over Tokyo, guiding subsequent bombers to encircle the city in flames. Despite Tokyo's valiant defensive efforts, the sheer intensity of the fire overwhelmed the city's defenses. From their vantage point, B-29 crews bore witness to the inferno blow. Citing historical records, Bowman, whose father was part of the raid crew, quoted Jim Wilde, a B-29 fighter engineer. "The world beneath us was an inferno, and the heat and smoke quickly permitted our aircraft The firestorms thermal up the rafts were so powerful that they lifted the massive aircraft by thousands of feet, only to drop them abruptly. B-29 pilot Robert Bigelow detailed the Japanese defense measures, stating, "The sky was filled with traces of anti-aircraft fire, intersecting in a chaotic dance." Despite the barrage, Bigelow and his crew remained focused on their mission. He later reflected, "The shrapnel's clatter against our wings was drowned out by our focus on the task at hand." After releasing payload, Bigelow navigated his B-29 away from the burning city. Even from a distance of 150 miles, the glow from Tokyo was unmistakable. Fires raged on, consuming even the areas from which anti-aircraft fire had originated. Tarry smoke toward the stars. The tempest swallowed whole city blocks in mere minutes. The vast expanse of Tokyo was consumed by an inferno. Within a mere half hour, what began an isolated fires converted into colossal blaze that defied comprehension. The city's fire department, overwhelmed by the scale of the disaster, was forced to retreat. The Japanese authorities, faced with an unprecedented crisis, scrambled to facilitate a massive evacuation. The Shitamaki district, once bustling with life, was now at the mercy of the flames. Thousands perished, trapped between the advancing fire and the suffocating smoke that followed in its wake. Haruya Nihei had experienced the devastation of United States bombing on Tokyo, but the urgency in her father's voice and the early hours of March the 10th signaled a threat of a different magnitude. Without hesitation, she grabbed her emergency rucksack and fled their family spice shop in the Kamito district accompanied by her family. Taking refuge in an underground shelter, Nihei vividly remembers. The shelter was filled with the sounds of frantic footsteps and the cries of children, but even the shelter's confines couldn't keep the impending doom at bay. Emerging from their temporary haven, they were met with a city in chaos, with homes and landmarks reduced to cinders. Foxholes, which the government had touted as safe havens, proved futile against the flames. The city was covered in a thick smoke, obscuring vision and disorienting the B-29 bombers. Some weird, of course, intensifying the devastation. On the ground, panic reigned supreme, with temperatures in certain areas soaring to 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, exacerbating the human toll. By the time the fires receded, aided by the expansive Nakagawa Canal, the devastation was evident. Over 100,000 individuals had perished. 1 million were injured and another million were displaced. Those fortunate enough to survive were met with a city space transformed into a smoldering wasteland. Many sought solace in Tokyo's more affluent areas. However, the stark contrast between the affluent they encountered and the devastation they had left behind sparked a new wave of anger. The remnants of the devastation settled like a dark, foreboding a snow over Tokyo. This harrowing event would forever be etched in the memories of its survivors as the Nights of the Black Snow. In the aftermath of the Tokyo firebombing, the magnitude of the destruction was downplayed by both Japanese and American media outlets. Each had their own narrative to maintain, with neither side willing to fully confront the staggering human toll. American reports highlighted the crippling blow dealt to Japanese infrastructure, framing it as a significant victory over Japan's industrial might. On the other hand, Japanese news outlets focused on their defense successes, particularly the downing of B-29 bombers, while sidestepping the vast civilian suffering to project an image of unwavering resilience. The American leadership at the time did not categorize the incendiary assault on Tokyo, which resulted in the loss of over 100,000 lives, as a war crime. It was portrayed as a strategic decision, a necessary measure to hasten the war conclusion and protect American soldiers. Yet, even with the obliteration of vast industrial zones and the tragic loss of countless civilians, Japan's determination remained unbroken. The nation's response was pragmatic, relocating the remaining air squadrons from offensive operations to defensive roles, fortifying Tokyo against potential future attacks. For General LeMay, the architect of the Tokyo raid, the operation was deemed a monumental success. He believed that Japan's war capabilities had been compromised. The devastation of March the 10th emboldened the American forces. Subsequent raids on Tokyo in April and May raised an area equivalent to 1.5 times the size of Manhattan. The firebombing campaign was extended to other major cities, including Nagoya, Osaka, and Kobe. Records indicate that even smaller towns, totaling 58, were not spared. Northfield and Tinian Island, from where the B-29s took off, became the epicenter of these operations, transforming into the world's most active airport. The U.S. Army Air Force's post-war documentation stated that by June, Japan's primary industrial hubs were no longer viable targets. Yet, these relentless assaults did not push Japan towards capitulation. Instead, they steeled the nation's resolve. Prime Minister Kentaro, in a farewell proclamation, asserted, "We alongside the entirety of our nation are insisted by the American actions. We are committed to confronting and defeating this audacious foe." Japan's tenacity persisted for another 5 months, until the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki compelled them to surrender. In the years that followed, as the world grappled with the war's aftermath and its ethical implications, perspectives on the night of the Black Snow shifted. Experts from Japan advocated for its recognition as a war crime, amplifying the voices of that night's silent victims and urging the United States to issue a formal apology. To date, the United States government has not issued such an apology. In official records, the Night of the Black Snow remains classified as a wartime military operation. Many thanks for watching this video. Please comment about this video, subscribe my channel, and like and share this video.